The children's sermon started us off well. Doesn't mean we'll end well, but started us off well. I got a little fascinated by improv and found its foundational idea to be very much like the idea of faith. And the foundational idea is yes and. So if you have a couple actors that come on the stage and they are simply going from scratch, that the rule is yes and. One of them might start by saying, boy, there's more stars in the sky than I've ever seen before. And the other one says, I know. Things sure look different from up here on the moon. So you see, I know is a yes. And then his and, which he added to it, puts us in a totally different place. Now we're on the moon. No wonder the stars look different. And then the next person, the first person again, has to then build on that and say yes to being on the moon. And who knows where they might go from there. See, the second person could have said, I don't see any stars. It's daylight. And that's a way of saying no, but it's daylight, and that kind of puts the whole thing into a dead place. So let's try it. We won't try that. We'll try this little game that they play called one-word sentence, okay? And here's the idea. You get to say one word, and then the person after you says one word. And you're supposed to say a word that comes to your mind that kind of logically fits in, That's pretty much it. Barbara, want to start us out? Peace. Love.
And friendship.
Now, a little thing. You said two words. That's all right. We're just starting. But if you say and peace, love, and joy
are
peace, love, and joy are lovable. Peace, love, and joy are lovable. Period. Start us off. What? God. Patience. Eternal. God, patience, eternal. Can I come back to you, Lou? Son. God, comma, patience, comma, eternal, Son. Period. Right? Brightness. Brightness. Passing over. You're allowed to pass. Brightness takes. What do you think, Sim? Brightness takes the, I'm going to take the from you. Brightness takes the joy. Brightness takes the joy. Happiness. That was great. Happiness. Ha. Either she had something in her head that she didn't want to let the rest of us know. Happiness together with happiness together with forever. Hey, this is like a lesson. Okay, that's it. We're going take the. I'm going to stop there. You see how it goes. It goes that you're able to trust what the quote is in there, that no one of us is smarter than all of us. So together, we trust what each other have to offer, and we say yes to it, and we say and then we add our part to it. You get it? So there's this crazy little text for today that Barbara pronounced the word of the village from which the man came, Baal Shalisha. Thank you, Baal Shalisha. And this little story of Elisha's miracle starts there with this man. Doesn't tell his name, just tells the village that he's from. But that's important to know because Baal Shalisha is a place where they worship the god Baal. Why is this man coming to a holy man of Yahweh? We don't know exactly, but he is coming that way. There's a significant difference between Baal and Yahweh. In the Hebrew Testament, there is, they do not abide gods that do magic. You see it from way back in Moses, and the priests of Pharaoh would call out magic on the gods of Egypt in order to make things happen for the Pharaoh. But when Moses, remember when he's asked if he will go and lead the slaves out of Egypt, Moses says to God, well, who shall I say is sending me? In other words, what's your name? And God says, I am who I am, or I am who I will be. I will be who I will be. It's a conjugation of the verb to be, is, am. Well, what kind of a name is that? You can't go to, when people ask him, who sent you? By what authority are you doing this? And he says, I am. Well, that's not a name. That doesn't help. But see, the Pharaoh's priests believed that if you knew the name of a god and you knew the correct way to manipulate this god by some incantation or some action, you could get the god to do what you wanted the god to do, right? Yahweh slips out of this altogether and says, no names. So you have someone coming from the place where magic happens. The thing about magic is, if you don't do it exactly right, you get a no. The idea is that, if you come to the God and you say, Roger, my great God, would you give me a new car? And if Roger has the ability to give me a new car, if he were like Baal, he would say, well, you have to do the right things. You have to stand on one foot and say abracadabra, hocus pocus. Or you might take, for instance, Elijah, the precursor of Elisha. Remember when he had the 450 prophets of Baal and they were fighting? There was this battle that was going on. Who could light all of these woods, all of these slaughtered cows, bulls on an altar? And the prophets of Baal cut themselves and cried out and used all manner of incantations and could make nothing happen. And then Elijah simply kneels and prays a simple prayer. The point is, it's not about the setup. There's no dramatic music and there's no female assistant in a low-cut outfit. There's not this something to really make it look like, whoa, this person knows magic. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in Jesus' miracles either. They're way played down because it's about being. It's about the way things actually are. I mean, those of you who know me, and you've heard me say this before, I don't believe in a God that's out there who comes in and then changes things because we ask this God to change things. The God I believe in, which may not be exactly the way you believe, but it is, God is a verb. God is this energy. God is this love, this thing, this tape that holds us together. Paul Tillich, famous theologian of the last century, called God the ground of being. And that connects to Yahweh, I am what I am. The very structure of the way things are is what God is. And so God is showing us in these texts how things actually are, and consequently the way we should act. You following me, or have I totally confused you? Okay, I'll take those smiles and nods to mean, okay, I get what's going on. Some of you are squinting your eyes a little. Okay, maybe it'll come back later. So, there's a man from Baal Shalisha who has come to the prophet of Yahweh, and he is bringing his first fruits. Now, this is a really important idea, because first fruits are a matter of how you look at the world, how the world is actually structured. First fruits sends us toward a way of being in the world. And the first fruits are, when the harvest happens, before you harvest anything for you or your family, first of all, you take it and you bring it to the priest or the prophet. You give it to God's work that's being done in the world. But you don't, will there be enough left for me and my family? Well, you are trusting that as you give this first fruits, that there will be enough that is left. God says yes first. That's the point of first fruits. God has been the first one to say yes in your life and in my life. God has created this world. God has given you this life that you live. God has given you the gifts and the talents that you have. God has said, yes, you are part of this world. You belong in my creation. And our job is to say, and. Yes. And now we respond to that yes, and we say, and. We improvise with God. God isn't saying the big no. If you don't do everything that I want you to do exactly the way that I want you to do it, then you are going to hell. I don't believe in that God. I believe that God is continually saying yes to us. And sometimes when we muck it up and we run off a cliff, we make a shambles of our own life, God is there still saying yes. Pick it up. I'll still be with you. There still is a way for you to say and. So, he brings the first fruits. God's yes. And his and is to Elisha. And Elisha says, hey, feed these people here. And he looks out and he goes, whoa, there's 100 people here, and I only got 20 barley loaves and a few sheaves of grain. How am I going to feed all of them? Okay, that wasn't exactly an and, was it? But Elisha repeats exactly the same command. And after it, he says, thus says the Lord. And there will be some left over. The repetition is important. And the addition of thus says the Lord is also important. This is Yahweh at work. This is the structure of the way things are. You give the first fruits, and others will say and as well. Now, a lot of folks look at this text that we're reading today, and they say that this is the text off which the gospel writers wrote the story of Jesus and the loaves and fishes. And you can see how they think that. So that Jesus kind of develops this idea of God's generosity, of God's yes, and the people saying and even in the Christian Testament. But here, we are shown that even in the midst of, I forgot to say this, they're in a famine. Okay, just back up, to the beginning of the sermon. Insert, there was a famine in the land. I was supposed to say that. And even in the midst of a famine, there is a yes and that works. So, what does this mean for you and me? I would just want to say this, that what is the kind of person that you want to be? And what is the kind of community that we want to be here at South Church? I mean, there are constant, it's not that there aren't times that we need to say no to things. There are times, and we all know them. But more often than not, we end up being feeling that it's so important to be right that we can't say yes and to someone else who has a different idea, even if just to try it out for a while. But our need to be right is so big that we can't do it. Or sometimes there are times when we want to walk into a room and just take up all the space, and so that the focus comes on us and the other player really doesn't have a spot, like the one who might have said, I can't see any stars, it's broad daylight. That's an attempt to kind of fill up the room with yourself and your idea and shut down all other ideas in the room. It calls us to be that kind of person that stays open to other people's ideas. It is the kind of idea that calls us to a kind of a flattened hierarchy, like I'm Denny Moon, minister of South Congregational Church, and if you don't do what I say, well then, it's outsy for you. Well, that is not the kind of community, of course, that we long to be. Everyone has a place here. Everyone has a place to be able to give an idea that we hope we can say, yes, and what about this? And yes, and what about this? It's what we do all the time, or what we try to do. We say yes and in Kaleidoscope Corner to kids who want guidance and love. We say yes, and here's how we do it. We do the same thing with our confirmation class and with our youth group. We say yes and to those in our community who are lonely and who are hungry with our community meal. They can come, be part of a community there, eat, and walk away with some free food. That's a yes and if I ever heard of it. We say yes and to those people who have a spiritual hunger as well with our workshops and our Bible studies and our classes. Yes, and let us be a part of your journey of faith and try to pick up from where you are and help you move in the way you feel God guides you. Yes, and if you're looking to expand your boundaries, well, as Charlie said in the prayer, remember, we send people to the Lakota Reservation. We send people to Biloxi. We send people to Appalachia. We have service projects in our own area. If you want to expand the boundaries of your life, we have a yes and for that. God has said yes. We say and. We welcome anyone into this congregation, any race, any sexual orientation, any age group. Come on in. We even let adults be children during the children's sermon. Yes, and. So I want to challenge you this week. I want you personally to think of doing a yes and sometime this week. Maybe it'll come at a time when you might respond no. You know, we have that habitual no thing that happens. You know, Sally will say, oh, I see the grass is getting quite long. And inside of me, I'll go, no. Before she asks the question. In one of those situations, say yes, and yes, I see it's long, and before we hire the farmer to come and hay it, I'm going to go out and cut it. See how it changes your interior life when you do it, when you say yes, and. Because it opens up this large channel, this awareness that you are not alone responsible for all things, that there are others who also want to contribute to your life because God has said yes to them as well. And they want to be part of the circle of giving, of caring, of love, of peace, of justice. Yes, and.